Hi, I'm Dave Bundy, editor of the Lincoln Journal-Star, and this is our editorial board endorsement interview with Emmy Pollen. Emmy is running for the Lincoln Public School Board in District 2, which is kind of like a little south and east slice. A lot of people in the southeast sort of central part of the city. Emmy, thank you very much for being with us. We'll do a quick edit board in introductions, and then we're all going to shut up and just let you talk. So, Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
So, Mike James, I'm the newest community board member.
All right. Kent, over my shoulder. I can't tell. I guess you're my right shoulder since we flopped.
Kent Walgamot, I write about arts and entertainment, and I've been on the editorial board for a dozen years or so.
And I've already talked a lot already, and I'll get to ask some questions. So, Emmy, we will start off with you now. So, first of all, public service can be challenging these days. So, why do you want to serve on the school board, and then what experiences and attributes qualify you for service there?
Okay.
And well, you can start off with a bio type thing if you like too. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I can kind of answer both at the same time, maybe a little bit. I want to serve on the school board because it's such an important role. I have a passion for children. I spent time caring for orphaned and abandoned kids and doing things like teaching English and doing extracurricular classes like their art and music and band in orphanages. And so I just feel like that's a really important role. And when I first started, there was no opposition to the people that were running. And I thought, you know what, everybody deserves a choice, and a little bit of like competition makes us all stronger. It encourages all of us to kind of think harder about where we stand and both sides of issues and topics. So I just thought maybe this is something I could do to kind of serve our community. We've, my husband and I have been in Lincoln about 5 years, and we've definitely made it our home and our place that we want to be. We bought a house and have committed to Lincoln. And so we just kind of wanted to give back to our community even more.
All right. And you've sort of covered it. Just want to make sure there are no additional experiences or attributes, things about you.
I have a degree in intercultural studies, which is topics like anthropology, social issues, race, communication, things like that. And so I know right now a lot of the hot button issues are in society and in schools are kind of centered around, we're hearing a lot about critical race theory, we're hearing a lot about gender and identity, we're hearing a lot about kind of social constructs and how we teach history and how we teach government and things like that. Worldviews, obviously people in Lincoln have each family has different worldviews, so we kind of as a school board need to be aware of that. So I feel like my background in intercultural studies kind of lends itself to helping me maybe be an informed board member in regards to those kind of topics and issues.
Okay. So the next question, you sort of wandered into the minefield already with some of those topics. So this is a little bit related to that. Obviously, parents are supposed to be very involved in their children's education, but what role do you think parents ought to play at kind of an administrative level? How should parents interact with the board and administrators?
Yeah, I think obviously we want to keep allowing parent comments that makes them feel like they have a say. It also makes maybe board members who aren't necessarily in the schools with it. We can't be in every one of the 60 schools that Lincoln has, or 60 plus schools. So it just makes us aware of what people care about and what's important to them. Role of parents, I think that we don't need to be afraid of transparency. it seems tedious to let, parents know what the daily lesson plan is for every single subject or whatever, but we could definitely let them know what the main curriculums we're using are, maybe what the textbook is. We shouldn't really be afraid of transparency and things like that.
Okay. What do you see as the most pressing facility needs in the district, and then the most pressing staffing needs? And do you have any suggestions for solving those needs?
I think if the answer was simple, we'd already not have the problems that we have, but let's see, facilities. It's hard for me to say because there's so many schools, and I'm sure everybody in each building would say, oh, I wish they'd fix this or that at our building. I do know that we have some older buildings, especially in my neighborhood. We have buildings that are over 100 years old, like Prescott and Everett, and, Saratoga, Lincoln High. I know personally, this is just one of my frustrations as being a para and preschool associate in the schools, is some of our preschools don't have a playground. And that's kind of frustrating for those kids. Like, it's hard to play when you don't have something to play on. I mean, there's balls and chalk, but I know that's maybe a frustration for some of those preschool teachers. Staffing wise, we need staff everywhere. I mean, every day over 100 openings go unfilled for teachers, for paras, for lunch ladies. I know as a substitute, whenever I get into a building, they're just like, oh my goodness, nobody ever shows up. We're so happy to have you. Solutions. One option could be looking at maybe some type of an alternative calendar that has more breaks built in and spread more throughout the year. Maybe that would allow staff members to come back more refreshed. It might allow time for some of those special events or surgeries or whatever that people sometimes need to take off time from work to do, or like, holidays, time with family, those types of things. Obviously, paying people more is always a great incentive to getting people to take positions. A creative idea might be we have problems with graduation rates, and part of that might be that these teen students want a job, they want to make money, or maybe they even feel a need to help support their families. So could we somehow offer a work-study program that helps these kids stay in school, but then maybe we could also give them jobs as helping with the custodians or the lunch ladies, interpreters, for language interpreters for some of our ELL students, before and after school care. I wonder if there's some type of a way we could do a program like that that would maybe fill some openings and keep kids in school.
All right. How do you think Lincoln Public Schools do as far as stewards of our taxpayer money?
I think we probably have the money that we need. I think we probably just need to spend it wisely. I know that's really hard, and without having access to the exact budget and knowing exactly what expenses are going to come up, I can't predict the future. But yeah, my goal would be to work with the money we already have and just try to really seek to spend that wisely and decide what our top priorities are and where to put that money towards those.
All right, Emmy, you are on like record-setting pace here, answering questions quickly. So if there's one that you want to come back to, we can do that. Or if you want to just talk for a really long time about the next couple, you can too. But this next question, so there have been questions about police officers in schools, the resource officers, questions about the application of discipline, and periodically, even recently with Prescott, you had a safety issue.
Yep, I'm aware of that. Yep.
Students or teachers. How do you think LPS performs overall in their disciplinary programs, and how might they improve?
Okay, well, I don't, like I said, I'm a substitute at LPS, so I've been in the buildings. I know substitutes, I know teachers, and subs don't want to sub, especially at the higher levels, because the bigger the kids get, the scarier they are, the harder, to control, I would say, the more attitude. People don't want to sub because they're scared, like actually for their safety. And I don't want to bash kids with behavior issues and special needs. My husband and I are foster parents, and we have had those students that hurt teachers and that have uncontrollable rage. And so like, I know where that's coming from, and I know that's really hard. But also that's kind of why some teachers are scared, and why subs don't want to sub at those levels, is because they don't know how to handle those behaviors. So let's see, safety. So everybody wants our schools to be safer, but when we start talking about having people that are in the buildings that have a gun on them, like a resource officer or security guards, that makes parents nervous. But then also not having security makes parents nervous. So I'm really trying to listen. I've been kind of polling my constituents and kind of trying to figure out where they really are on this. The obvious answer would be like, well, let's put metal detectors in all the buildings, but that's expensive. And that maybe creates a culture of fear, and is not the message we want to send to our little kids. We have, the evidence proves that school resource officers, when used correctly, when they have this specialized training that's kind of unique to being in a school, actually help reduce issues and not encourage them as far as violence and things like that. So obviously more resource officers is always a great option. We really need to have our paras. And again, that's a staffing issue, having enough paras, because, we're working without them, and then we don't have, teachers need to be able to do their job of teaching, and then have behavior interventionists and school therapists that can kind of do those roles. So we also have this teeter-totter balance of mainstreaming kids, but then also meeting kids where they're at. And again, as the special needs mom to foster kiddos, and I've worked in special ed in Des Moines and Urbandale school districts before we came to Lincoln. And sometimes our special programs are really great for kids if parents are willing to do that. So like, I've been at Don Sherrill, I've seen, Yankee Hill, maybe some of our like classrooms aimed at kids on the spectrum or with autism. Those can be really helpful, because sometimes the regular classroom setting just isn't the best for those kids. And the benefits of maybe a different education system outweighs the philosophy of the mainstreaming. I have seen, I think Don Sherrill is the best school in our district. The amount of staff engagement there is amazing. And the ability for teachers to just be able to teach, and then to have the staff that can deal with, pull out kids and deal with behaviors or troubles, or having the therapist on hand, and all of that is just a great model. I wish we could do that everywhere in the district, but I don't think we have the finances or the people. But if we could, that would be awesome. And actually, one of the steps they've even taken there is kids aren't allowed to have a backpack. And I know we've talked about that too. I hear frustrations from parents who say like, yeah, they're not allowing backpacks for the students, but then they have to carry all their stuff around and they lose it, or it's bad for their backs, or that type of thing. So it's really hard to know what to do to keep kids safe. And it's kind of like you do one thing and half the people like it, and then you do another thing and half the people don't like it.
Okay. I am at my last question, so I want to see if Mike or Kent has a follow up based on anything that you've asked. So Mike, you unmuted yourself.
I did. I was just curious, you mentioned at the beginning about what your work with orphan kids, and I was going to ask you to expand on that a little bit. You kind of touched on that in the last question. So if there's anything else, I was just curious about your experience dealing with orphan kids, and I think you kind of already answered it, but if there's anything else, maybe your direct experience in dealing with that, and maybe what you kind of already answered it, but maybe just expand a little bit more on what your experience is with orphan kids.
Yeah. Okay, so I've cared for kids in Trinidad, Romania, Haiti, and Taiwan. And then I don't want to imply this is a different country, but it's maybe a different culture. I've also worked on our Native American reservations. Like I said, one of the unique things that I've learned is that institutions can try to be parents, but they'll never be very successful at it. So I think one of the things that the school boards or schools try to maybe do is parent our kids because they see that parents aren't stepping up and doing their jobs. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's the school's role, and I don't think they're very good at it anyhow. If the parents of our students are struggling and maybe not doing what they should be doing, there still is public institutions that are maybe better at that than the school would be, like for instance, DHS or the Big Brother Big Sisters program, or some of our, programs that support parents with like food or clothing or transportation. So I think it's always best if the school just focuses on educating and doesn't try to parent. Obviously, we want our schools to have those programs. Like there's the food shelf at the high schools. There's the parent English classes. Those are all great programs. But ultimately, I love it when we're empowering parents to do their jobs instead of trying to be the parents, because the school just isn't there. Even, a teacher can't be the parent of the 30 kids in her classroom. But obviously, I love it when teachers build those relationships and want to care about their students and their home lives and make sure that they're, reporting when they see things happening, or if a kid's coming in without shoes for PE every week, that they just provide a pair for them. Those are the things that make our Lincoln schools good and make my heart happy. Okay, back to the orphan question. So also a lot from those experiences, I also learned a lot from working as a team. We would have people from different countries all working within a country together. And so just learning how to communicate well, how to have good relationships, and just the things like the diversity that can also bring unity. It's good to have different perspectives. And I think that's something that's awesome about our Lincoln schools, is they are so diverse, and we have so many different students, and some of them are refugee students, some of them come from other countries, they speak other languages. And I really think that's a benefit.
All right, Kent, anything over my shoulder? All right, well, Emmy, this is our last question for you. What didn't we ask you? What didn't we talk about that you would have liked to address?
Let me just look here. I have my little cheat sheet.
That's fair enough.
I feel like I pretty much have covered it all. Really, I feel like I covered all my bases, all my talking points.
All right. Well, any last thing that voters ought to know about you before we sign off?
I think my main message is I'm just a foster mom and an educator, and Oh, some people have been concerned like, oh, well, if you're working for LPS, are you going to have to quit your job or whatever? We've already worked through that. They actually encourage people to be substitutes for the schools and be on the board, because obviously you're getting an insider look at what's happening. So I will be able to keep being a substitute for LPS and still be on the board if I'm elected.
They don't want to lose a good substitute. You're right.
Yes. Oh, and okay, so I substitute, I can substitute as a teacher, and I've done that. I substitute as a para. I also substitute as a lunch lady, and I can be a bus associate. So I've done lots of different roles depending upon how it fits into my schedule. Currently, I am also the children's pastor at our small church. So that takes up some of my time. And then we currently don't have any foster kiddos in our home, but when we were doing that earlier this school year, that also took up a part of my time. So being a substitute works for me around my schedule.
All right. Well, Emmy, thank you very much for making time to talk with us today. We wish you the best with your campaign, and we look forward to seeing what happens ahead for you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thanks a bunch.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.